I'm TerryDavidMulligan. This is Mulligan Stew, the podcast. I'm going to be speaking with the podcast royalty in just a couple of minutes. Grant Lawrence is our guest. He reminds me that we have been friends for 36 years. He and Nardwuar would come to my front door to ask questions about bands that I had interviewed or had played. My handouts would be, on Halloween, I gave him a couple of records. Grant says he still has them. Grant, of course, was the first podcaster for CBC for many, many, many years. He still does their top 20. He is an author. He released Adventures in Solitude in 2010, had a spin-off audio and a podcast, real-life characters. He's got a children's picture book called Adventures in Desolation Sound. His young son, Josh, has a rock and roll band called Blue Jay Valley, and they have an EP coming out in March called We Like to Rock. The love of his life, Jill Barber, has a new album that he's going to talk about. And if you want to see him in Stories and Songs live, he's already gone through Galiano and Maple Ridge and Bowen and now Sidney. In April, they're going to be in Oliver, wine country, Lake Country, just outside of Kelowna, and the Effie in Kamloops with Joel Plaskett and Ashleigh Ball and Lindsey Bryan and Rob and Andrew from Bum. Anyway, he's a busy guy, and we're going to talk about all that busyness and reconnect. Great guy. We met in the front window booth, number 4, I believe, at the Five and Dime Diner, opposite the Mary Winspear Centre in Sidney by the Sea. Grant Lawrence, good friend, 36 years, is our guest on the Mulligan Stew podcast. It's Grant Lawrence has joined me here on Mulligan Stew, the Mulligan Stew podcast, and the, strangely enough, Terry David Mulligan YouTube channel. It's strange how that works. My friend Elliot said, you should do a podcast. And I said, I don't know what that is. And he said, you're already doing it.
Yes, I remember when I saw you explaining that to everyone. So, yeah, I'm glad you're in the mix.
How long have you been a podcaster?
Oh, you know what? Here's some trivia for you. I did the first ever original podcast for CBC. It was the CBC Radio 3 podcast, and it was me talking about independent Canadian music. And I had the exact same reaction as you. I'm the radio guy. I talk on the radio. I talk on a microphone. What the heck is a podcast? Didn't know what it meant. Didn't know what it was. Didn't even like the sound of it. And my boss, who is a visionary named Steve Pratt, thank goodness, said, no, it's just like a radio show. You just talk to the microphone and talk about the songs. It's just on demand. People can listen to it anytime they want. Still skeptical, did it, and it was probably, we're going back to 2005. It lasted for about 10 years, and we wrapped it up just before the podcast boom. We were a bit ahead of our time. We thought it was over, but it was probably the biggest thing I've ever done in my career at the CBC is that podcast. It was crazy with the hundreds of thousands of listeners and millions of downloads, and so it shows what I know.
How many episodes?
I don't know, over 10 years, weekly. There's a lot of episodes. It was well into the hundreds, and it was a lot of fun. And we had the interesting thing that I realized about the podcast is because it's on demand, we were getting these expat Canadians that were writing in from the most bizarre places all over the world, like the middle of Mongolia and down in a mine. And I remember I got a big map of the world, and every time some Canadian wrote in from some far-flung place, I would stick a little pin in the map. And by the end of that podcast, the end of that run, this map was covered in push pins all over the world. And it was a pretty incredible experience.
Did you take a photo?
Probably.
Oh, that's good. Let me just do fact-checking here, okay?
Sure.
CBC Radio 3 podcast?
Yeah, done.
CBC Radio 3 Sirius Satellite Radio.
Done.
The top 20.
Done. Well, the top 20, that's right. The top 20 is still on Sirius Satellite Radio on CBC Radio 1. The Radio 3 channel on Sirius no longer happening. But yeah, the top 20 is on Radio 1, CBC Music, which is the Radio 2 frequency, and on Sirius. So yeah, that's still going.
I have a question for you. It's a big one. You know about the Trans-Canada Highwaymen?
Yeah, love them. Absolutely love them. Friends with all four.
Yeah. Would you do a version of that?
Well, I'm a big, like you, I'm a big supporter of the Trans-Canada Highwaymen. I think they somehow have made those CanCon songs that we thought we were all so sick of really interesting again and fun. And maybe it's Stockholm Syndrome, but through their lens, it sounds really fresh. But would I do something like that, like a super group?
And who would you do?
I think maybe the show that I do now, Grant Lawrence and Friends, is my version of a supergroup.
And you're physically on the road.
I'm physically on the road.
Okay, so the question leading out of that is, which Smugglers song should the Trans-Canada Highwaymen cover on Volume 2?
Well, Chris Murphy likes to tease me relentlessly about the vacuousness, if that's a word, of most of the Smugglers catalog. In fact, he did a little pull quote on the back of my book, Dirty Windshields, about the Smugglers, and he said, "Wow, this book is very relatable, except my band was actually good."
Your band, by the way, is mentioned in just a second. I'll tell you about that. I wrote down Shot Down or Especially You.
Yeah. Oh, Especially You.
Yeah, okay.
Shot Down's going
they
way to the beginning.
Okay, but they could do Especially.
Especially You was the song one of the songs that you championed on Much West, and actually ended up getting into rotation on the nation's music station in the 90s, and that was back when, if a video got into rotation on Much Music, you would have people at your shows. Simple as that.
There's no rhyme or reason for the questions that I'm asking. They're just as I come along.
Yeah,
what did you leave in the Hall of Fame in Vegas, the Punk Hall of Fame?
Oh, yes. The Punk Rock Museum in Las Vegas, Nevada, opened by the guys from NoFX. They asked, I was kind of surprised, they asked for some artifacts, and we gave them one of my rubber boots. The Smugglers used to wear rubber boots to represent our West Coast home with rain and all that. And so one of the Smugglers' rubber boots and a picture of me wearing the boots on stage at the Commodore is on display.
But they could be anybody's boots. There's no writing on them, is there?
There is. There's a red Smugglers S in our emblem, and it's in the Canadian cabinet.
Okay, I'm going to move on.
Okay.
Because you have a sound check.
Yeah,
where will you be May 23rd?
May 23rd? Is this a trick question? Is that the May long weekend? I'm probably in Desolation Sound. Why? Is it your birthday? What?
Because May 23rd, 2004, the Smugglers called it quits.
Oh my goodness!
It's 20 years to the day.
Oh my goodness! Good research, Terry. You stumped me and shocked me at the same time.
20 years.
20 years of no Smugglers. We had our reunion blips, which kind of closed the loop on all that around 2017 to 2019. We did a bunch of shows, so that helped me close the chapter on that band. But I had no idea it's been 20 years.
So you're doing Stories and Songs live now?
Yeah.
Okay. Did you miss being on stage?
Yes, I do. And in fact, the great late John Mann, when Spirit of the West were wrapping up, I said, "John, what are you going to miss?" And he said, "The applause."
Yeah.
And I missed that. I missed the audience interaction, and I missed the fun and the touring a little bit. But nowadays, Terry, I spent all those years in the Smugglers traveling to downtowns, going to the club, room painted black, stunk like urinal pucks, and then smoking beer. I just want to go to nice places now. So I just usually stick to BC and go to places like Sidney and the Sea.
Bowen,
yeah.
where they want an early and a late show.
That's right, yeah. 3 sold-out shows with a bunch of old pals from West Van. Ron Woodall was there.
Nice.
The A&W Root Bear Science World Designer guy, and saw a whole bunch of old friends with that one. It's old CBC cronies, too.
So tonight, you're at the Mary Winspear in Sidney. Pretty posh.
Yeah.
Galiano,
Yeah.
where they love to say, "How long are you staying?" Maple Ridge. So those
That's
bang.
And that's it. And even these 3 exhaust me. just 3 in a weekend. I'm done from like 6 weeks.
I see as you're touring wine country in April, you're going to Oliver and Lake Country and the Effie and Kamloops.
That's right.
With Joel Plaskett?
Yeah, Joel's on these 3 shows. And then on the show,
Joel
Plaskett from Halifax, yeah, he's on these 3. He's an old friend of mine. I've known him for 30 years, ever since his days in Thrush Hermit. I'm sure you've probably crossed paths with him then too. And we've just remained friends, and it's great to bring the East Coast to the West Coast and mix those stories and songs.
But you drove up in that Volkswagen. I don't see any other band members. Are they on their own?
We all travel separately because we all come from different places.
Like Kiss.
Yeah, like Kiss, but in Kiss in cars. Yeah, something like that.
So who else is on stage tonight?
So tonight it's going to be Joel Plaskett from Halifax, Ashleigh Ball, who just lives over the peninsula right by the ferry over there, the Brentwood Bay ferry. And then we've got Lindsay Bryan, a great singer-songwriter from Victoria. And then we also have Bum, Andrew Malloy and Rob Nesbitt from Bum. One of my favorite underrated Victoria, BC pop-punk bands from the 90s, and I've dragged them kicking and screaming out of retirement to play a couple of songs tonight, and more for me than anything.
So you're going through Galiano, and then Saturday tonight, you are at the Act Theatre in Maple Ridge with Joel and Ashleigh and
my lovely wife, Jill Barber. And, I grew up in West Vancouver, and I was actually doing a comparison of the people that have come out of Maple Ridge and the people that have come out of West Van. Pretty different.
Do you have to adjust the rider for her?
For Jill? Oh, yeah. There's got to be a really, really nice red wine. Yeah. But that's about it.
By the way, you're passing on Main Island. Why is that?
Well, we don't pass on any of them. We just do them in a kind of rotation, but I don't like to do them too frequently. So we've done the show on Saturna, Maine, Pender, Salt Spring, but we don't, I need like a 2-year gap.
You have friends on Maine.
Oh, yeah. Kurt Dahl from the New Pornographers is on Main Island.
Limblifter?
Yeah, the Limblifter guys, both brothers, I think.
Studio?
Yeah, nice studio there. Yeah. Hawksley Workman played it a few months ago, I think. Mm-hmm.
Okay. Dirty Windshield.
Yeah.
There's 2 Dirty Windshields.
Yeah, there's the book, and then there's the podcast audiobook version, which I'm just wrapping up. It took forever, but I'm just wrapping it up. And I put out the final chapter a couple weeks ago, and I'm doing the epilogue and the Where Are They Now in the weeks to come.
Now for the books. Yeah. Return to Solitude. Has it been printed again?
Well, it's been reprinted a few times. It came out, that's the sequel to my first book, Adventures in Solitude. So the Solitude ones are about life and desolation sound. So that was my most recent book, Return to Solitude. It came out a year or so ago. Did really well. Very happy with it. Back on the charts, as they say. And still touring it.
Bailey the Bat?
That's the kids' book. That's for, like 5, 6, 7-year-olds. Basically, I used to tell my kids at bedtime stories about this little bat that couldn't sleep. Nocturnal animal, but wanted to be awake all day long. And I would tell and make up these stories for my kids. And then a publisher approached me saying, hey, we're thinking about you for a kids' book. Do you have any ideas? And I said, yeah, I got this idea about this bat that can't sleep. So we created that book, Bailey the Bat.
And Lonely End of the Rink can still be found?
Yeah, it can be. All the books are still in print. I don't let them go out of print. I still sell them and sign them at all my shows. You can get them on the BC ferries, thank God. I love a captive audience. And
by the way, you can tell how important this interview is to me. I have used my yellow highlighter.
See that? Yeah, it's good. And it's amazing that you can read any of that.
I went back and checked out your last post just before the holidays on the website. And you talked about traveling in songs and stories, the cavalcade. You did that holiday version that you did in East Vancouver at the Culch. Yeah. Did you record that?
No, it's...
Damn, man.
I know, it's a shame that I don't record them. People ask about that a lot. A couple of them we recorded early on, and they were holiday specials on CBC Radio, but haven't recorded any in a while. I should be podcasting them. but I also like the fleeting nature of them, because after all the stuff we went through in the pandemic, I like it when people are physically present, and I like the experience in the moment, that unless you're there, you're there. And if you're not there, you're going to miss it. And there's no getting it again.
Well, I do a thing called Christmas in the Round, which spun out of my brief time at Roundhouse Radio in Vancouver, in the East End. And it was because Barney was doing his Christmas tours, and they were together. And I said, "Can you one more, just one off? Just come in. We'll do it in the boardroom. We'll shut the things, and we'll do it." And we've done 4 now.
Oh, yeah.
The last one was on Zoom with Mary McLaughlin back in Toronto.
Oh, yeah.
This is the first time I've seen something in front of me that said, there's a possibility here that we could, down the road, have this as a Christmas special for folks on the air on CKUA.
Yeah, we could do that. We could do that for sure. Yeah.
Oh, by the way, that holiday version had, I love Jill and Luke Barber and Dan Mangan and Charlie.
And then, Dan, that's right.
Dan and Dawn Pemberton, who, of course, hosts her own show on CKUA.
Yes, she does. Yeah, that's right.
And the kids.
Yes, my kids were up there as well, Josh and Grace.
Okay, so Josh has got the Blue Jay Valley, right?
That's right. That's his rock band. He's 10 years old. Could be one of the youngest rock bands in the world. They're all 8, 9, and 10. They write their own songs. They put out their own record.
They have their own merch.
They have their own merch. They have T-shirts. They sell out shows in East Van. When Nardwuar and I were putting on shows on the North Shore when we were kids, they would not sell out. We couldn't get... It was hard to fill those church basements. And somehow these kids at age 8, 9, 10 are doing... Maybe it's because I'm their dad and it took 30 years of experience to figure it out. But Nardwuar keeps saying, they sold out? How'd they sell that place out? Oh, they're mopping the floor.
EP comes out in March. We Like to Rock?
Yeah, March 1st it's out. It's a 4-song EP, We Like to Rock, featuring their localized hit No School, where they have a line in there.
Don't want to go no school, don't like the teacher.
And there's a line in there, PD Day right now, all year long, oh wow, something like that. Every parent's nightmare.
By the way, I wrote to the merch people and said, do you make anything in XXL?
Oh, nice. Yeah, there are adult T-shirts.
But who gets that? Who's the merch director?
You're looking at
Jill?
No, it's mostly me.
By the way, I like the fact in their bio, the Blue Jay Valley band with Josh, your son, talked about their influences.
Yes.
The Hives, Gob,
Yeah.
Ramones, Sloan, but no sign of the Smugs.
I know. There's no Smugglers on the list. It's so embarrassing. Yeah, it's true.
Adventures in Solitude, by the way, your book from 2010, just fantastic.
Yeah.
There was a spin-off audio in the podcast, and real-life characters. Russell the Hermit. Somebody approached you about maybe making a film about Russell the Hermit.
That's right. A Hollywood director who I had never heard of, but he swore to God he really was, and he listed some of his shows. He approached me and he said, I want to make a movie about your first book. But his pitch reminded me of that movie with Tim Robbins called The Producer or something like that. It's kind of a dark Hollywood farce where these 2 earnest writers come in and pitch this kind of art film. And by the end of the movie, the film stars Bruce Willis and everything's exploding all around. And so that's kind of what, I wrote this book about my real life and my parents and the real characters. And this Hollywood director had this idea where it suddenly turned into a crime caper where there's bank robberies. And I'm like, there's no bank up there. What are you talking about? And that me and the Hermit would go on the run like the Getaway style.
And who did he want to cast as the Hermit?
Liam Neeson.
Yeah, that didn't work. Okay. Yeah. However, I do have a suggestion for the casting. If you ever want to do it, it really should be Jeff Bridges.
Jeff Bridges, yeah, that'd be great.
He is the Hermit.
Yeah, for some reason they wanted to cast David Cross as me. I'm just kidding.
Yes.
We didn't get that far.
Okay.
I actually dropped the conversation. We stopped the conversation when the guy went rogue with me on the script, and that was it. And never heard from him again.
By the way, Desolation Sound,
Yeah.
I looked up desolation, the word desolation. A state of complete emptiness, bleak, stark, misery, sadness, gloom.
Yeah.
You are none of those things. No, you are none of those things.
Thank you.
By the way, and I kept going and said, there's a death metal band from Oregon called Desolation Sound.
Oh, interesting.
And they have a single an album called Where Darkness Dwells on Blood-Soaked Records.
Oh, God. Jeez, that's all very foreboding.
And you want Jeff to go into this business.
Yeah, well, that's kind of one of the things that, Josh, that's one of the interesting things that kind of attracts and keeps people away from Desolation Sound is the name. It is foreboding.
Yeah.
And weird stuff continues to happen up there to this day.
Well, you play games up there. Chronicle?
Crokinole. It's an Eastern Canadian game where you flick a puck. It was made by the Mennonites to get through the winters. It's a wooden board shaped in an octagon stop sign shape, and you shoot a little wooden puck or a crokinole for the middle hole, and it's kind of a cross between, it's a tabletop version of shuffleboard or curling, that kind of
throwing sandbags.
Yeah, or bocce ball where you bounce other balls away.
Is Full Moon Float what it is?
Yeah, the Full Moon Float in Desolation Sound every July. All the boats gather at a place called Sea Lion Rock. We tie up to each other, and we all crack our favorite beverage, and we just let the currents of Desolation Sound float us around as the moon rises over the coast mountains.
What is Ladies Whiskey Night?
That's an event that Jill put together in the summer in Desolation Sound, where she invites all the ladies of Desolation Sound over, and they get absolutely plastered on whiskey. It's very dangerous. I don't like it.
Do you know Leroy Stagger?
Of course, very well. Lives right around here.
He hosts a show for CKUA called Dirty Windshield.
Well, that's where I got the name. It was a song of Leroy Stagger, Dirty Windshields.
What next?
The next thing for me is this Adventures in Solitude book that you mentioned 14 years ago. It came out. It just never seems to end, whether it's weird movie pitches or kids' books. So the new thing is that it is being turned into a kids' book for the 50th anniversary of Harbor Publishing. So the children's illustrated version will be out this fall on Harbor.
And it begs the question, re-asked question. There's somebody celebrating the 50th anniversary. Yeah. You have a 20th anniversary coming up on May 23rd for the Smugs.
Amazing.
You could re-release something. You do it like a deluxe version of something. Yeah. You could do a one-off.
Well, there is a lot of talk about that. We did have a 30th anniversary album of an earlier Smugglers record come out a year or two ago called In the Hall of Fame. And there's talk about reissuing a couple of the other records when we get to their anniversaries as well. So that's all in the works as well.
Is there another book coming?
Yeah, I think so. I just don't know what it'll be.
What's going to be the end result of radio? It seems to be
radio
itself.
I think TV's in more trouble than traditional cable television is in more trouble than anything else. But I think radio will always survive because it's an essential service. If the poop hits the fan, what do people reach for? Now, they might reach for their phone, but if they're in their car, they're going to reach for the radio, and they're going to try to find a station to tell them what is going down. And so I think radio will always be around. I've been wrong before.
Do you recognize the Grammys, the Junos awards? I mean,
Absolutely.
But I mean, look at the way they're built now.
Yeah.
There's not a lot of room for people like Bonnie Raitt. She wins her for.
Well, the Grammys just did a great tribute to Joni Mitchell. Yeah. And they had her, and they do I always believe you got to know where you come from to know where you're going. And I thought the Grammys this year did a great job. I mean, with Joni Mitchell, she was playing Both Sides Now, and Alison Russell, the newcomer, who spent many years in Vancouver with Poe Girl, she was on stage with these two great Canadian musicians, and I saw that as a kind of a passing of the torch in some way. I saw it as very symbolic and quite beautiful.
If your life story is going to be played by somebody. Let's say it's going to be played by somebody. Somebody's going to throw money to the wind and do your life story.
Yeah.
Which member of the Beachcombers which actor from the Beachcombers would play you?
Well, I'm, like you, I'm friends with Jackson Davies, but he's way too tall.
Yeah.
Great guy, so funny. Unfortunately, a lot of that cast is now gone, but it had to be Relic.
It has to be Relic.
I mean, come on. I mean, he's the coolest. The crazy thing about where I live in East Vancouver is you look around and everyone's dressed like Relic now. Everyone's got the little toque, the Mac jacket.
They don't know who Relic is or Robert.
But popped up, the canvas pants rolled up, the Converse sneakers. They're dressed exactly. And you go to any brewery, it's like a sea of relics in the tasting room. I mean, he had no idea the trend that he was setting 50 years ago. So yeah, it'd be Relic for sure.
Finally, I would be not doing my job if I didn't ask about Jill and her new album.
Yeah, she is releasing her third French album this June. It's called Encore, and it's all French songs. This time, she's done all original songs. This time, it's all covers. And she is going to be touring the jazz festivals this summer, so she'll be in and out of Desolation Sound all summer long. And I'm sure her other French records are the most successful records in her catalog. So hoping for big things with this one, too.
Did you hear our hard-hitting interview with the Edmonton Folk Festival?
Yes, that was awesome. I loved it. And I love that you are still going to that festival and that you're still connecting with artists and that you're still doing everything that you do. So thank you very much for it all. And
what's the opening number tonight?
I'm going to do a little bit about ferries and what it's like to try to have a reservation and try to make the reservation and try to get to the terminal. And over in Langdale, Horseshoe Bay, they do the yellow ticket system. Yeah. And it's just like getting that yellow ticket. It's like Willy Wonka level. So I'm going to do one of those, which a lot of people always relate to. And then I'll probably throw in something about a nude potluck in Desolation Sound or just something, boats. People just love to hear about the boats.
You can also ask your audience, how many cars can you get on the Mill Bay Ferry?
21?
No, 19.
19. I was pretty close. Yeah. Pretty close. Yeah, I've been on that. I've been left behind on that one and just made it. And yeah, that's an old school ferry, that's for sure.
What's your website?
GrantLawrence.ca.
Do you think in our lifetime we will see the Vancouver Canucks win the Stanley Cup?
Man, I've written a book about it, about the first 3 times that they almost did it in the lonely end of the rink. I feel like the team goes in like 10-year waves, and we saw the 82 Canucks do it, the 94 Canucks do it, the 2011 Canucks do it, and so here we are. We're right there in that perfect wave again where we're cresting up, and we've got all the pieces. So I'll just say, because I'm an optimist, yes, we will.
Thank you, Grant.
Thank you, Terry. Always great to hang out with you.